There's Bernie Sanders. He's in Brooklyn. You know, the first several years of his life, he lived in Brooklyn, and that's his childhood home, right there. And Hillary Clinton on the right side of your screen, upstate, hosting an event in Buffalo. She was apparently running late. Who knows? It's very hard to keep track of, traffic and everything that's going on, but she is very late. There's a big crowd there you can see behind her, and Bernie's, of course, is in front of him. Both Hillary and Sanders are taking somewhat of a softer tone about each other today after reports that the DNC was unhappy with the rhetoric seen on the campaign trail between these two. But even while Bernie Sanders tried to clarify his comments for calling Hillary unqualified, he still came out on the defense here. Stay tuned, and here's offensive comments.
She regrets a lot of things. And I think, and I don't mean, and in saying that, I don't mean to be sarcastic. Yeah. We all make mistakes. But I regret less than she does because I had the courage to vote the right way, even when it was not necessarily popular.
So he regrets it, right? But who knows exactly what's going on between these two, although they're trying to back off right now. Chris Hahn is, of course, a former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer. Ed Rollins, Fox News political analyst. Great to see both of you. Chris, this is your team here, and we can look at the rhetoric that had happened before, because we pulled a bunch of things, most recently off the web, headlines where it showed he said, she said, Bernie ripping Hillary, Hillary ripping Bernie, and you look, and that tone was so bad 48 hours ago. Suddenly, they both are tripping over their tongues. Why?
Well, I think they saw that it was getting a little out of hand and they needed to walk it back. I think they both agree that they would rather see one of them than anybody on the other side in the race. And quite frankly, look, I think Hillary's going to do very good here in New York, better than the polls even suggest. I think Bernie's got a ceiling of about between 37 and 41% here in New York, very similar to what Zephyr Teachout did against Andrew Cuomo. And I think Bernie understands that going after her in New York on things like her vote after 9/11 on the Iraq war, there is an explanation that can be had there and a reason for her doing it, and he's got to tread very carefully.
Ed, you're very good at strategy here, and I began to wonder, what does he do if he can't verbally take her on in a very aggressive way? He needs to crush her in New York so as to crush her in the general election, at least trying to get that nomination. Can he do it without speaking about her email controversy or anything like that?
He took a pass on the email early on, which obviously he could have reinforced the dishonesty issue that a lot of people hold on her. I think at this point in time, the chance of him winning New York is very slim. And I would say that they both have decided to tone it down a little bit, just go out and campaign effectively, contrast themselves a little bit with Donnybrook going on our side. And I think that's not a bad strategy. At the end of the day, she's going to be the nominee, and he's not, and they need to be unified as a party to get back in this game.
Well, you're speaking Chris's language because you're a big believer in Hillary, but Bernie Sanders has won 6 out of the last 7, and don't laugh, Wyoming caucus is this weekend. He is expected to win that on the Democratic side, Chris, and that will make it 7 out of 8. It's not like he's losing everything.
No, and he wins caucuses where it's very hard for people to vote. But when it's a closed
Michigan,
primary, well, yeah, it was very close. But here in New York, it's a closed primary. All these first-time voters, these non-affiliated voters that come out and have been supporting Bernie, they can't vote in the New York primary. And I believe when they're getting questioned by pollsters, they are saying they plan to vote in the Democratic primary and being taken as Democrats when they may or may not actually be Democrats here in New York, which is why I think he doesn't do much better than Zephyr Teachout did against Andrew Cuomo 2 years ago.
Let's get to Donald Trump. Look, he changed his strategy, Ed. He canceled going to California probably because he really wants all of those 95, or as many as he can get of the 95 Republican delegates here in New York.
He's right where he should be. He's a little over 50% at this point in time. If he can maintain that, he'll win a big chunk of delegates here. If he doesn't, if he slides back now, having met that match, it'll be perceived as a loss. And my sense is the two opponents here are not New Yorkers, are not going to do particularly well. He's a New Yorker just as Hillary's a New Yorker. Losing here, you basically pay a heavy price. This is his home turf.
What do you think?
I would add to what Ed said. Look, this is the first state in a while where Donald Trump actually has a political organization backing him. Much of the New York Republican organization is with Donald Trump. they will help him get out the vote. I think he'll do a little bit better than the polls suggest. He'll probably take 80 of the 95 delegates here in New York.
That's a lot. Okay, obviously that's huge. But can I just quickly touch upon the Corey Lewandowski situation? He is beefing up the role of Paul Manafort, who already was on his campaign, as I understand it. Ed, does that mean that Corey Lewandowski is looking like he's going to be not tossed, but there's a lot of drama around him, and now suddenly people who used to work for him are speaking out and saying that he's made sexist, obnoxious remarks in the past?
Well, we're coming down to where you need experience, and Corey didn't have much experience before. Manafort, who I've worked with in the '84 campaign many other times, is very experienced at finding delegates and the mechanics. He's an adult. He's a tough guy, and I think to a certain extent you can't have two people in charge of a campaign. You can separate charges, but I think Manafort day by day is going to get stronger.
Either of you guys Catholic? I need to jump in because there's this little bit of a controversy. You are, Ed?
I'm a Catholic.
Okay.
I'm a lapsed Catholic.
Well, I'm a little lapsed too, but I'm gonna be back there. Saint Dismas is my patron saint, the good thief.
Chris, you're part Jewish like me, aren't you?
I am.
Okay.
I got both sides going here. Guilt on both ends.
Guilt on both ends, although we're born with it and Catholics learn it in school. Bernie Sanders is Jewish. He got a little excited about a meeting he was invited to, and this is just developing, a conference that would have put him with the Vatican, and suddenly he said, well, I want a meeting with the Pope, and now the Pope's upset because Pope Francis doesn't want to necessarily, Ed, meet with any of these candidates because it would appear to be an endorsement.
Well, it would be taken as an endorsement, and he shouldn't meet with any of these candidates. The reality is, let this thing get finished. If he wants to come back in January and meet the next president, feel free to do that. But he should not get involved in this thing at all.
And there is some suspicion going on right now about how he wound up at this conference, and I think that there might be more to this story than him, quote, being invited by the Vatican. I don't think that that's actually what happened. But can I go back to what you said about Corey Lewandowski and the Trump staffer?
Sure.
If I was Donald Trump, I would break out my wallet, I would hire Ed Rollins and listen to everything he said. Because if you had a guy like Ed who actually knew how to run a campaign, running his campaign, this election would have been over a long time ago.
Ed's happy here.
Well, thank you very much. But my loyalty is here to Fox. Did you hear that, Mr. Ailes? I'm right here to the bitter end.
Me too, Roger. Chris, it's great to see you. Chris Hahn,
Nice
Ed
to see
Rollins.
you guys, too.